Interaction Attendant is a visual interface designed to give the non-programmer the ability to create complex and powerful call flows within the Interaction Center platform. While it is relatively straightforward to use, there are a number of caveats, best practices, and troubleshooting tips that I found can make the Interaction Attendant user much more effective. These segments assume a certain familiarity with Interaction Attendant and are based on Interaction Center 3.0 Service Update 10. Interaction Attendant can be run on the IC server or on a workstation. As a best practice, Interactive Intelligence recommends using Attendant from a client workstation on a day-to-day basis. Interaction Attendant is included on the IC server and installed on client workstations as part of the IC Server Manager apps package. It is critical to be sure that the version of Attendant on a workstation is at the same service level as the IC server it is connecting to. To view or modify Attendant configurations, users must be granted or inherit the appropriate rights in Interaction Administrator. These are View Attendant Configurations and Modify Attendant Configurations, and they mean exactly that. Be sure you know who in your organization has rights to modify Attendant configurations. Knowing who was the last person to make a change and why is often the easiest way to resolve an issue. Notice that there are several configurations available to select. Interaction Center currently includes 3 commonly used Attendant configurations: Inbound, Operator, and Email. These are accessed by changing the configuration switch in the target field of the Interaction Attendant shortcut. Consider creating a copy of the shortcut for each configuration for quick access. Interaction Attendant controls changes by locking the configuration to the first user with valid credentials to access it. When the user exits the application, the lock is released. If the same user attempts to open a second instance of the configuration, the same user lock dialog is presented. A user should only overwrite the lock if certain another instance is not open, as both instances would have the ability to publish changes with unpredictable results. There are some cases, however, when a lock may not properly release. One example is a system that loses power and therefore the application is unable to close gracefully. When this happens, it will be necessary to overwrite an invalid lock. If a second user attempts to open the same configuration after it has already been locked by another user, the Attendant in Use dialog is presented. Clicking OK will allow the user to continue to load Interaction Attendant, but the user will be unable to publish any changes. This is also true for a user that chooses not to override the same user lock. To save changes made to a locked Attendant configuration, the user must perform a backup export and then import the changes later when the application is no longer locked. A lock greater than 24 hours old is considered stale, and the option to overwrite is presented. However, in some cases, an invalid lock will prevent other users from publishing changes to Attendant configurations, and the following procedure must be performed to clear the lock. On the active IC server, run regedit. Browse to HKey Local Machine, Software, Interactive Intelligence, EIC, Directory Services, Root, the site name, Production, the primary server name, Attendant Data. Delete the Attendant Lock key and close regedit. Attendant should now be able to be opened normally. Regularly backing up Attendant configurations is an excellent way to protect against destructive changes and data corruption. A backup export is an exact copy of the current configuration that can only be imported to the same server. A full export is the same, but can be imported to a server where the only difference is the server name and password. Importing either of these will overwrite the existing configuration. A package can be any Attendant node including its child objects, and when imported, does not overwrite the existing configuration, but is added to it. Interaction Attendant loads a configuration from an IC server that contains profiles, schedules, and operations. These can be added, deleted, copied, pasted, moved, deactivated, expanded, collapsed, and sorted. A visual indicator is displayed for any errors in configuration, and hovering over the node provides a brief description of the cause. Finally, each node can be selected to add an entry to the interaction log, which is often informative and useful for troubleshooting. And if reporting is enabled for the IC server, IVR reporting for the node can also be enabled to provide basic information for interactions passing through it.